My name is Jordan Burdick, and I'm a third-year law student working in the Manglona Lab for Gender and Economic Equity. Today, I am joined by Kathrine Switzer. She's an iconic marathoner, an author, a journalist, an activist, and a women's rights champion. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today, Kathrine.
Thank you, Jordan. It's great to be here.
Nice to have you. So, who comprised your immediate family growing up?
You know, I had a very traditional American family. My dad was in the military. My mom was a school teacher. So my mom and dad and an older brother. And that was it, the four of us. And we were a very close family. My parents very much valued family time. So there were sit down breakfast and sit down dinner together every day.
That's amazing. That's a great tradition to carry on, I feel like, especially these days. Were you assigned the same responsibilities at home as your brother? Did you guys have the same chores?
Yes, we did. His were a little grosser than mine. He had to take out the garbage, but I had to do the dishes after dinner. So they were more somewhat role types, but Saturday mornings there was no sleeping in. It was bang, bang, bang on the door very early in the morning. My dad said, okay, up and at 'em, and breakfast. And then it was every Saturday was a challenge. Today, really exciting, we're going to haul rock. So it would be cleaning the yard and getting, it rototilled or getting the rock up. We'd bought a new house that it was completely unfinished, so we had to finish it ourselves and clean the yard, and it was a really big job. And I heaved the wheelbarrow of rock just like my brother did. And in fact, I took to the gardening a lot more than he did. So in the fullness of time, when the yard and the garden got really nice, I really was more in charge of it than he was. But for activities like sports and stuff like that, my father worked with my brother on how to use a gun, for instance, but not me. But I showed no aptitude for it and was not interested. On the other hand, there was a big rope that my father tied up a tree, a huge one. It was about this big around. And he said, everybody needs a climbing rope. And I immediately took to climbing this rope, and I climbed this rope at least twice a day. And it was a huge distance and a big climb, but it made me really very, very strong. My brother had no interest in that. So, it was what it was. It was, when my brother and I did things together, if he was better than I was, I never said it was because he was a boy. I always felt it was because he was older.
I love that. Yeah. You would say your parents treated you guys pretty equally.
Yeah, they really worked hard on that. My mother especially, because she was overlooked as a girl by her family, who favored the boy, and the boy grew up to be rather shit, and really self-important. And she really was amazingly squared away. And she realized the only way she was going to get ahead was to be very, very good academically, because her parents weren't going to educate her. And so in her high school, she worked very hard and got a scholarship to the University of Illinois. And then when she got to the University of Illinois, she worked jobs and worked as a librarian, and went on and got a master's degree. So she really was determined. And a lot of the way she was treated as a girl reflected on her ability to push herself forward. And she always told me I was always going to get a university education. I was always going to be, get every opportunity that my brother ever had. And she drilled that into my father too. So my father was a very egalitarian guy anyway. In fact, it was my father who was the one who encouraged me most in sports. And I know we'll get to that story pretty soon. But the point is that in our family, everybody had to pull their weight. But everybody was also really encouraged to achieve and to do successful things.
That's amazing.
And no goofing off. Yeah. unless it was fun and we all goofed off together.
Absolutely. Universal goofing off. You mentioned your mom was college educated and then also got a master's degree. Did she work throughout your entire childhood and life?
Not throughout my entire childhood, because she felt there was, when I was very young, that she should be at home. And she actually stayed at home My dad, was in the Korean War, so there was a time when she actually needed to be at home to run the house and to make sure, we were looked after, because she was the only one there. So, and she was incredibly, strong and really well organized. So, probably, I think, she went back to work. This is interesting. She went back to work when I was in third grade.
Okay.
But she was working as a teacher in the same elementary school where I was. So we would go into work, school at the same time every morning, and come home at night together.
How fun.
And also interesting because this was quite post-war, it was a baby boomer, and there were lots and lots of kids being born. So our fourth grade class, for instance, had 40 kids in this class. It was outside of Chicago, and my mother was my teacher. And I tell you what, she cut me no slack whatsoever.
I'm sure she didn't. Yeah.
But
And
yes, she worked all the time, and she was a great role model. And the only thing that ever upset me was the fact that she felt, and I felt for a long time too, and then I was ashamed of myself, that she should still be able to cook, clean, and keep a house as well as have a full-time job. Now, I'm sorry, when you got 40 students, and you're teaching 7 different subjects a day, and you've got piles and piles of papers to grade and stuff like that, you shouldn't be expected to do the ironing.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Did your parents share the housework, that is traditionally within the women's domain? Did they split responsibilities within the home?
My father was an extremely egalitarian guy, but they divided the other work. You know what I mean? He did yard, he did cars, he did the shoveling snow, he did the cleanup of the fireplace, he did the all of the that kind of stuff. But ironing and washing and dishes, no. But that got foisted off on my brother and me.
As it should.
One of the things my mom didn't do, and I think this is because she had to as a child, is she should have said, okay, you're old enough to learn how to do your own laundry. And she should have showed us how to, do that, put it out, and be organized with that. But I think it's because she had to do it as a child for everybody. She felt, I'm not going to make my kids do that.
Absolutely.
And when she earned enough money, she hired a cleaning lady, to do a lot of that work. And I said, yeah, why should she spend her salary, not enjoying herself? So she yeah.
Would you say amongst your friends and classmates, were most of your peers' moms stay-at-home moms at this time?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I was always often disappointed in them. They didn't seem to be very happy people. They smoked a lot of cigarettes, they played a lot of bridge. And my mom was always out doing pretty exciting things with all of us. I mean, she was the most popular teacher in the school because she always created challenges for us, and all of her students that were very challenging, but achievable, and made learning really quite fun. I mean, I remember once, she announced that at the beginning of the term, that anybody who there was a spelling test every week, and that anybody who got 100% 10 times in a row got to go out to dinner and to a movie. And of course, at first there were like 4 or 5 students who were always the straight A students who got the 10 times. But I kind of joked about it. And then all of a sudden they got to thinking, wait a minute, they're all going to a movie and going out to dinner, having a wonderful time and talking about it all week. And my mother put it all together and they were having a great time. I wasn't there. I didn't do my 10. And so finally I knuckled down and got my 10 too. So it was fun. But
full circle moment.
yeah.
How was your experience in school? Were you a straight A student, or, did you enjoy school?
I did not enjoy school, and there was a reason for this, and I do blame my parents for this. Is that when I first began going to school, I was only 5,
Mhm.
And there was this experimental program in Arlington, Virginia. My dad was at the Pentagon at this point.
Okay.
Um, and they thought they were going to enroll me in this program. And there was this cohort of students, I would say there was probably 50 of us, who all were 5, and we were tested and we were deemed possible to start first grade rather than waiting till 6. And anyway, I hadn't gone to play school or kindergarten or anything. So suddenly I was in first grade, and it was fine when I was with other kids who were 5 years old. But by 3rd grade, we had moved to Chicago because my dad, was in the Army, and we went to the 5th Army headquarters there. And then I was with kids who were a year or 2 older, and they were always bigger and faster and smarter because simply, somebody who's 7 is smarter than somebody who's 5.
Absolutely. And those years are
Yeah.
so formative.
Yeah. And so I was always felt like I was catching up. And it really reached crunch point when I went to high school.
Mhm.
And of course, that's when my whole life changed, because when I went to high school, I was in class with like 18-year-olds taking algebra and French. And another mistake my parents made is Kathy's so bright, we're going to put her in the advanced stream. I had no business being in algebra and in French and had no idea. I mean, I didn't even know what conjugate meant when I got into a French class. And I was struggling like crazy. And I was, but I was only 12. And everybody else in there was like 15 in algebra. This guy was 18. And it was really a complete disconnect for me. And I
Mhm.
really struggled. I mean, I did all right. I had B's.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of A's, some C's, but mostly B's. But I was also very, very active in all kinds of programs. I, wanted to be on the high school newspaper, and I wanted to play field hockey, and I was in the prom committee and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I was very, very creative in activities and events.
And did your high school offer sports for men and women at this time?
Boy, was I lucky. That's the beginning of my Boston Marathon story, actually, which is
Yeah.
that when I left, I went from elementary school, 7th grade, to 8th grade. 8th grade was in high school in those days. There were no
Okay.
middle school. And
Gotcha.
so in 8th grade, I was in all these advanced classes already. And I remember saying to my parents when I came home from elementary school that I wanted to be a high school cheerleader because I wanted to, be popular and pretty and accepted.
Flip
And
in the
all that
air.
stuff. Yeah, yeah. And my mother said, "Oh, that's a terrible idea." And I said, "No, no." She said, "No, no, no. They're always hanging out with all the boys. You don't want to be a high school cheerleader." And my father said, "You don't want to be a high school cheerleader because that they cheer for other people. You want people to cheer for you." And he said, the game's on the field. It's not on the sidelines." And I said, "Well, what am I going to do?" And he said, "Well, your school has something new." And they did indeed. This is a brand new high school, brand new. They just built it. So
Mhm.
all of us were new students. And they have a field hockey team for the girls. And I said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "I don't know." But he said, "I know it's about running. And I've seen you run and you would be a really good player." And I said, "But I've never even had, played that game before." And he said, "Well," he said, "the thing to do is to go out and run a mile a day. And if you ran a mile a day, you'd be the best player on the team." And I said, "How am I going to be the best player on the team if I've never had any coaching or anything? I don't even know what the game is." He said, "It's about running." He said, "You're going to get in such good shape, you're going to be the best player. Trust me." And actually went out and we measured off the yard and became a math game, and all that kind of stuff. So I did 7 laps every day. And in the fall, I tried out for the team. I was very, very nervous, listened to everything the coach said to do, how to hold the stick, how to do this. He was right. I was really one of the best players, not because I had skills, but because nobody could catch me, and I never got tired.
Mhm.
But the bigger thing was this about this. This is an important part of my story, is that mile a day that I was doing every day in the summer, hot, sticky Washington, D.C.,
Mhm.
was beginning to empower me, because some days were easy and other days impossible, no rhyme or reason. But when I walked into the school, with all of these, there are 1,500 kids. I mean, I came from a little country day school,
Wow.
right?
Yeah. Big high school, even by today's
Yeah,
standards.
yeah, 1,500 kids. Um, I said, "Okay," whew. I said, that guy sitting next to me in algebra, maybe 18 years old, but he didn't run a mile today, and I did. And I felt like I had this kind of Wonder Woman belt, you know.
Oh my gosh, yeah, sports are so
Yeah.
empowering.
Yeah,
Did you
I
feel,
was really empowered by it, and I
yeah,
thought it was magic, and I didn't give it up. Even when I started playing field hockey and then played basketball and played lacrosse, I
mhm,
still ran secretly. I ran that extra
yeah,
mile every day.
running
Yeah,
was the thread. Did you
yeah,
feel like your high school supported the female athletics teams as the same way that they did
definitely,
men's?
absolutely, absolutely. The guys didn't. The boys, you
Mhm.
know, they'd go, "Ooh, they're playing basketball," and you
So
know,
you
we
beat them
got
in a race?
yeah. Well, no, the men's cross country team challenged the women's field hockey team to a practice one day, and they of course outran us all, and so they were better. And that's when I also realized, you know, the faster and harder you can run, you know, the better you can play just about anything. But
Mhm.
also, we had the small gym, you know, with a tile floor rather than the big gym with the wooden floor. Um, we we didn't have anybody come watch our games. Everybody watched the guys' games until we got to varsity, and then we started getting pretty good, and people came to watch. But nobody came out to watch a field hockey.
Mhm.
Definitely not.
Yeah, and did they have a women's track or cross country team at your high school that you were a part of?
No,
Okay.
no. But I really watched the men's boys cross country team, and I loved watching track from afar because I just so totally related to it. And in fact, I got one of the guys to show me what the cross country course was like. And when nobody was around, I went out and would run it myself. So, you know, that's where my passion obviously was growing. I had no idea where it was going to lead.
Absolutely. And were there media portrayals of professional female athletes at this time that you could look to for inspiration?
Some of them were discouraging. Okay, the role models. First of all, I remember the only woman runner I ever remembered seeing then was in 1960 at the Rome Olympics. I watched Wilma Rudolph in black and white TV, and I thought she was
Mhm.
absolutely magnificent. But I couldn't relate to her at all because she was fast. All right, that wasn't what I was interested in doing. What I did relate to was Margot Fontaine, the great ballerina, who was ballet is so hard and so ridiculous. I mean, it should almost be banned, but
Mhm.
anyway,
The
because it's perverse.
dedication.
It's really perverse what it does to you. But anyway,
Yeah.
she made something really difficult look beautiful.
Mhm.
And I thought, when I ran, I really felt beautiful. You know, I felt free and part of the environment. And I just thought I could run forever. Um, I love my team. I love my hockey team and basketball team and lacrosse team, etc. But I also was getting myself geared up for for college, where I knew I wasn't going to have any sports. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
that was the thing. But anyway, back to female role models. Life magazine seemed to be obsessed with the
Mhm.
two Russian sisters, were press sisters. One of them, Irina and Tamara Press. This they were, and they would show them looking like because they were both shot putters and
Mhm.
discus throwers, and they would show them all with their great muscles and their dirty bra straps showing and their hair cropped all off, looking like men, you know, and throwing the shot. And so everybody would look at those and say, "Oh my God, you know, I'm never going to do anything like, you know, be a shot putter. I'm
Mhm.
no, oh God, I'll turn into that." The feeling was if you became an athlete, you would turn into that. So we will avoid that. Um, and so a lot of times also when I would see really horrible looking women runners, and the press would always try to make them look as bad as possible, it seemed to me, um, then that was discouraging. So always when I ran later in competition, you know, I kind of pushed over to the ultra feminine look of
Yeah.
hair ribbons and
Graceful.
tights and yeah,
Mhm.
and try to make it look um, a lot more feminine and attractive. But ultimately choosing the marathon was probably the most grueling of all of the sports. But again, I thought about Margot Fontaine of taking something extremely difficult and making it look good.
Mhm.
So that was kind of my one of my ambitions, that
Yeah.
and to run further.
Beautiful.
But the other thing I was leading up to is that I also knew when I got to university there wasn't going to be any sports for me, so I
Mhm.
had better find something I could do by myself. Um, I was also writing for my high school newspaper. I
Okay.
was a sports editor eventually. And I loved writing sports. And I covered men's sports as well as women's sports. And so I decided I really wanted to be a journalist.
Mhm.
And if I was going to be a sports journalist in particular, I had better get a really good degree because it's not going to be easy for a girl to get a job.
Right.
And so I went to Syracuse University and I thought, well, if I have a journalism passport from Syracuse University, I'm going to have to be taken seriously. Um, and it was a good thing because when I got to Syracuse, there were no sports for women.
Mhm.
There were 25 for men, all scholarship deep. Women had play days. I mean, we're talking 1966 now, okay?
Right.
And I thought, what? I didn't say what's wrong with the men. I said,
Yeah.
what is wrong with the women here? That they are going to come to this big institution and they put sports behind them. Surely they played field hockey and basketball in high school.
Mhm.
Lots of them, surely. But no, it was like, you're grown up now, you put that behind you, you concentrate on finding the guy, getting married or
Yeah.
whatever, getting a job, maybe getting a job. Oh my gosh, that really upset me. Also, what upset me was the depth of scholarships. So women were missing out on the whole scholarship opportunity.
And was
But
that academic as well, that trend against awarding women scholarships? Did that translate to academic scholarships too?
I don't know. Actually,
Okay.
I never thought about it. I certainly wasn't eligible for a scholarship. I was just lucky to get into Syracuse University with ordinary grades.
Newhouse, I understand.
All is forgiven now, though. It's really been amazing. But anyway, um,
Was it discouraging to not see representation in college athletics? I mean, what obviously you were upset by it, but did there seem to be a consensus among females at Syracuse that they should push for more representation in college athletics?
no,
No.
that's what upset me. Is
Yeah.
that why am I the only one who thinks that we should have some sports here? And
Mhm.
why am I the only one who thinks that play days are something you did when you were 12?
Mhm.
This is really kind of crazy. Um, I in fact went to the men's track coach and asked him if I could run on the men's cross country team. Um, and he said, no, it's against NCAA rules, but if you want to come and work out with the team, it would be fine. I said, okay, that'll be great. Uh, um, and he was laughing and smiling and everything. So when I closed his office door, though, I heard him burst out laughing to his colleagues and say, I guess I got rid of that one. And I was so pissed off,
Yeah.
uh, but also intimidated. What am I going to do now? Am I going to show up or am I going to not show up? And I said, I've got to show up.
Mhm.
I got to show up. So I showed up the next day, very nervous. I was extremely nervous because I had to walk out on the, golf course and in my shorts and my top. And I knew I wasn't in this league in a million years. They're all scholarship boys, right? And every eye turned to me. And instead of them going, oh, like that, they all came over and said, wow, it's great to have you here. Welcome. And I couldn't believe it. It's just that they were so nice. And
Mhm.
I thought, how weird. This is wonderful. So running, of course, immediately went up in my estimation as a egalitarian kind of friendly sport. We're all out there together. And that's where I met the assistant coach of the team, who was not the assistant coach, really. He was a volunteer coach.
Mhm.
He was a 50-year-old guy, which seemed really ancient to me. I was 19. And he had been working out with the team for 30 years. And he was a mailman at the university. And he would go to do his job as a mailman in Syracuse, and then go to the field house, change his clothes, put on his shorts, go out and run with the cross country boys because he ran the Boston Marathon every year.
Mm.
And
Okay.
so the Boston Marathon was his big moment. And when he came over to me that day in 1966, he said, I've been here for 30 years and we've never had a girl. He said, it's really great to see you. But he said, I used to be a really good runner, but now I've got a sore knees. I got a bad Achilles. But when he saw me run, he realized he could keep up with me.
Mhm.
And so and I couldn't keep up with the men. So we ran together every day. And so, my little 3 miles a day became 5, became 6, became 7. And he was getting over his injuries because we were going very slowly on grass, which is, a key indicator of recovery, to go very gently on soft surface. And he would just regale me stories about the Boston Marathon. So nothing would do, but I said, I have to run the Boston Marathon. But I was really welcomed by these guys. I wasn't the team mascot. I was, I'd go out there and I would cheer for them. And I didn't go on any of the away meets, but at all the home meets, I would make signs and have people out there holding them and say, go, John, you're looking great. Yeah. And they all really appreciated it. But there was a really interesting social disconnect because I didn't go out with any of them, date them. One of them invited me to a fraternity party once. And so here it is, like Friday or Saturday night or something. And now we're in our, regular kind of cool school clothes type of thing at the fraternity party. Both of us were totally awkward. It was like we had already met on a higher plane. Right. And now we were standing there, with a beer and trying to be cool. And it just wasn't going to work. It just wasn't going to work. So that didn't last. But the guys became very, very good friends. And that was a really great thing because it was very difficult in university at that time for men and women to meet on like a friendship athletic plane rather than a sexual one or one where you had sexual bias.
Absolutely.
So it was
pure friendship.
Egalitarian. Absolutely. Incredibly inclusive.
Did you experience any pushback from anyone beyond those within the insular team for training with them?
No, because you know what, with cross country in particular, we were out on a golf course, so nobody saw us. We were 2 miles outside of town. However, it all changed when we went inside and ran on the indoor track inside the field house, where in fact the football team also they did their drills in there. And the throwers from track were in there, the hot shot putters and stuff. Very dusty, very noisy. And then the board track was, 11 laps to the mile. So it was very tight. And I was running on the track. The guys in the cross country team, now the indoor track team didn't mind, but I hated the confines of that place. And the football guys would always be looking over to me, but I'll never forget, there was one moment, a very famous football coach called Schwarzenegger, Schwarzkopf. Yeah, whatever. Schwarzkopf, whatever. Well, anyway, the football coach was watching me work out and do drills. And there was a big rope in the field house that went from, floor level, pretty much to the top rafters in the field house. And so I would say to Arnie after every workout, I say, okay, time to climb the rope, Arnie. He said, I can't climb a rope. He said, no, he was my 50-year-old mailman coach, right? And I said, okay, but I've got to climb it because it's really good for my legs and my arm. And so I shinnied up the rope and the football coach watched me go up. And then when I came back down, he shouted at his team. He said, a girl can do that. You're going to do that. Everybody is going up that rope today. And they go, oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah. Was that empowering though? Even though he used girl in a derogatory way, was that empowering?
Yeah, that was okay. I was really happy with it. It's okay. Happy to help you out, coach.
Yeah, you're welcome. I can be your motivator.
Yeah. But I didn't stay indoors very long because it really got dusty and it was very hard to breathe. And I thought this is counterproductive to my running. So anyway, Arnie and I elected. I said, let's go back outside. He said, this is Syracuse, New York. And I said, I know. And he said, sometimes it gets to be 30 degrees below zero. I said, okay, you used to do it. And he said, yeah, but, and I said, but what? And he said, well, nobody would ever run with me. And I said, let's give it a shot. And we ran through the whole winter together. And that winter was, I'm not kidding you, it was on record the worst winter in the history of Syracuse. We had 9 yards of snow. It was unbelievable. We would run through these canyons of snow. It was.
Yeah, you can run through that. You can run through anything, right?
Yeah. It was dark and we were in tennis shoes. I I can't believe that we actually lived through it, but it made
Yeah.
me very tough. Made me very
Yeah,
tough.
I'm sure. At that point, did you know that ultimately running Boston in 1967 was a goal of yours, or were you still
No,
towards that?
no,
When did that manifest?
it wasn't until the holidays of 66, just before I was getting ready to go home,
Mhm.
um, when there was a huge blizzard that night in Syracuse, and Arnie and I went out to run in it. And it was stupid. It was really stupid. We were doing a 10-mile workout, and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And I don't know why we didn't get killed, because cars couldn't even see us.
Mhm.
So we'd have to flatten ourselves against the snowbanks and let the cars go by. Stupid to be out. But anyway, I was very crabby, not only because of the weather, I was really cold, but also because I had exams coming up before I left. And what can I tell you? I've been doing a lot of running and not much studying. So I shouldn't have been. I should have been back in my room studying. But anyway, we were out running, and Arnie realized I was crabby, so he decided to tell me another Boston Marathon story,
Mhm.
and to cheer me up, And I said, "Oh, let's quit talking about the damn Boston Marathon and run it." And he said, "Well," he said, "that would be great," but he said, "a woman can't run the Boston Marathon." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, women aren't capable of doing it." And I said, "But it's not illegal or anything." And he said, "No, no, no, that's not illegal. There's a reason they don't do it is because nobody can do it. And there's no woman who can do it." And I said,
Mhm.
"Arnie, that's ridiculous." So we went back and forth.
Mhm.
And I finally stopped in the middle of this blizzard, and I went, "And you don't have a training partner unless you believe a woman can run a marathon." And he goes, "Oh my God." And he said, "If any woman could do it, I believe you could do it. But you'd have to show me first." He said, "If you'd show me in practice that you could do it, I'd be the first person to take you to Boston." So we
There's your
started training.
opening.
Then we started
Yeah.
training really hard. I got really focused, and cut a long story short, we not only did the distance in practice, the 26.2 miles. I thought the course was short, and I said, "Let's run another 5." And when we finished our workout, 31 miles, he passed out. And when he came to, he said, "Women have hidden potential in endurance and stamina." His
Mhm.
whole, he adored me. I mean, I don't mean that as a
No,
daughter or as a
absolutely.
father figure.
Yeah.
He adored me because I brought him back into running and loving it. And he was my mentor. He's my buddy. He was my buddy.
Mhm.
And we talked about everything. We argued about everything, religion especially, and as you do on the run. But anyway, when I showed him that I could do the distance and more, and that he passed out and I didn't pass out, um, he said, "I thought for a long time, but now I'm convinced." He said, "Women actually have incredible potential in endurance and stamina." And we realized that because the guys wouldn't come out and run with us on the cross country team. After um, after about 12 miles, they said, "You guys are crazy," and they
Mhm.
would go away. But that's when I could catch them. That's when I could stay up with them.
Yeah.
And so that's when I began to figure it out too. So
Mhm.
that was the beginning of that Boston Marathon story. But anyway, yeah. But see, Arnie was my buddy. He was a guy. My teammates were guys. And so I almost had disdain for other women because I thought, well, they don't get it. And my roommates, I lived in a very kind of eccentric living situation. We had this great, huge, ramshackle house, which was known as a cottage, but it was like a three-floor fire trap. And I lived in the very, very top garret, huge kind of attic thing,
Mhm.
with 2 artists, and we had the whole upstairs because they were artists and they had these huge canvases that they were throwing paint at all the time, and working and smoking, and they were beatniks and everything. and and I was the jock, and they thought I was, "Oh, she's cool, man. She's okay. You're weird, a little weird," but I thought they were weird. But
Mhm.
we got along really absolutely famously because we were both, I mean, all of us doing exceptional things, and a couple of the other women were into yoga and ballet, and they really liked the physicality of what I was doing. So we got with them, got along terrifically. But sororities and regular parties and villager dresses and all these things. Sorry, no, I wasn't there.
Fair.
But I wasn't just like a sweaty jock. You know, I was always erring on the feminine side. I mean, like
Yeah.
my two roommates were very beatnik looking, you know, long blonde hair parted in the middle, always smoking cigarettes, wearing their pea jackets and their blue jeans. You know, that
Mhm.
was the uniform in those days. And I was still wearing little outfits.
Yeah. Well, and the marathon obviously requires an intense level of grace.
Mhm.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about using an alias to sign up for the Boston Marathon in '67. I think that would be a really interesting story for all of those listening to hear.
It wasn't an alias. And then I didn't do it intentionally. When I was 12 and 13, and I started in high school working for the high school newspaper,
Mhm.
I began writing sports. I became the news editor as well. But I signed my name KV Switzer because every time I had a byline that was Kathrine Switzer, the printer would change the Kathrine and put an E in it. Because my dad, as motivational as he was a lousy speller, and he misspelled my name on my birth certificate. So he spelled Catherine rather than Catherine.
Mhm.
And I got really tired of it always being misspelled. And to this day, you know, I don't think I have a trophy in the house that has my name spelled correctly on it. It's really very
Cut
annoying,
the
you know.
E.
Yeah, they always have the E in it, okay? But anyway, so I started signing my name KV Switzer, also because, frankly, who was I reading? I was reading J.D. Salinger. I was reading W.B. Yeats and E.E. Cummings and T.S. Eliot. If
Yeah.
you were cool, if you were a really good writer, you signed your name with your initials. So I started signing my name KV Switzer. And that was wonderful for me. And then when I got to Syracuse, it was KV Switzer in all my papers. And so when it came time to sign up for the Boston Marathon, when Arnie insisted, my coach insisted that I sign up, he said, you know, you're a member of the amateur athletic union. You got to register for a big race like this. You can't just walk into it. You know better than that.
Mhm.
And I said, okay. And I said, is it against the rules? Because there was a woman who ran it the year before. She jumped out of the bushes and ran, Roberta Gibb.
Mhm. Yeah.
And he said, that's wrong. She really should have entered the race. And I said, yeah, but maybe there's a reason. Maybe it's against the rules. And he said, well, look, let's go through the rule book. We went through the rule book. There was nothing about it being for men only. And
Mhm.
then on the entry form itself, there was nothing about gender. So I paid my $2 and I signed the entry form and I signed it KV Switzer.
Mhm.
So I wasn't doing it to defraud the Boston Athletic Association.
Right.
But on the other hand, I wasn't telling people I was going to Boston. And I
Mhm.
wasn't going to go to Boston and say, I'm a girl, look at
I'm
me.
here. Yeah.
I wanted to be a
Absolutely.
runner. I wanted to be a runner. I wanted to be low key, just run.
Mhm. And
And I
taken
remember,
seriously, obviously, for
yeah,
your craft.
yeah.
Thank
So
you.
I remember when I signed the entry form and I pushed it across the table to Arnie. I said, you know, Arnie, I said, if I wear a bib number in the race, I'm going to be noticed. And he said, I know. He said, and I'm proud of you, which I thought was the most amazing thing, you know, that, you know, a 50-year-old guy is putting himself on the line for a 19-year-old girl. I mean, it's really amazing.
Mhm. He's your
I
champion.
said, okay. But when I got to Boston, the same thing happened. The guys were wonderful to me, saying, I wish my wife would run. I wish my girlfriend would run. It was only, you know, Jock Semple, the race director, and the whole busload of officials and the press, you know, who went ballistic seeing a girl in the race.
Yeah.
And I wasn't drawing attention to myself. And in fact, it was snowing and sleeting, and we had on all of our crummy running gear, and I had a big baggy sweatsuit on. I was very disappointed. I had really great shorts and top to show off in. And it was freezing. And we looked like refugees. Everybody was wearing this, everything they owned.
Right.
And I was just, as I say, disappointed in that. And indeed, the media said, well, she certainly looked bedraggled. I mean, wearing a baggy old sweatsuit, like everybody looked bedraggled.
Mhm. You're also running a marathon.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And you were only 20 at this time, right?
I had
So,
just turned 20. Yeah, in
okay.
January.
How did you handle the mass publicity about the shove picture after it circulated? What was that
Um,
like?
Well, it was mass publicity because that picture went around the world. And being a journalism student, we had a journalism library. They got the major dailies from every paper around the world. So it was not only in the London Times, it was in the Asahi Shimbun. So there it was. It was treated as a joke by most of the media. The headlines usually said, "Chivalry is not dead. Girl who wants to run Boston Marathon is saved by her burly boyfriend." So he became the hero of this story, not me. And so okay, he thought that was really cool. He really enjoyed that. But that I didn't matter to me. I was already at a different place by that time. I was so upset by the incident when it happened, and then really grew up very quickly because I made the determination to finish, which was the key thing. I couldn't quit because I knew I could finish. I was determined to do it, and because everybody expected me to quit, and the media just couldn't get over the fact that I wouldn't quit. Just hammered me for mile after mile after mile. When are you going to quit? When are you going to quit? And I said, you might as well leave because I'm not quitting. And finally, they went up to the start of the race because they were missing what was happening up in the front. And long about 22 miles just after Heartbreak Hill, 22 miles, you're on fumes. And I realized it wasn't even the official's fault because he's just a man who was a product of his time.
Right.
And I thought, duh. Up to that point, I'd murdered him quite a few ways a person could be murdered. And I realized it wasn't his fault. And then I got angry with women. I said, why aren't the women here? Why don't they get it? Why are they along the sidelines saying, oh, you should be home making dinner for your husband or something like that? Not all of them. Some of them are saying, go, honey, do it for all of us. So those are the ones I love. But I said, why aren't they here? And I realized that they weren't there because they were afraid, that they believed all the old myths that I had been told all my life, or they said I thought that I was going to look like Irina Press from Life magazine, or something like that. So it would never occur to them to do something as adventuresome or dangerous as running a marathon. But to me, it was the most freeing thing in the whole world. So it was that moment, and we often talk about that moment in running. It was a moment of enormous clarity for me. Suddenly the light came on, really the eureka moment, where I said, okay, I'm going to forgive the official. Okay, it's not his fault. It's up to me to change his mind. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to change his mind. And I'm going to change his mind by becoming a better athlete, and I'm going to keep showing up. But women, I'm going to somehow change their minds. I don't know how. And then I'm also going to become a better athlete, because people are going to tease me and say, you ran 4 hours and 20 minutes, that doesn't count. And it's perfectly acceptable now, but in those days it was a jogging time. In fact, the guy who attacked me in the race, Jacques Semple, called a press conference the next day, and he said, 4 hours 20 minutes, I could have walked it that fast. Right. I mean, I could have sued his pants off. Right. And people said, well, what does she say? And everybody said, well, she's forgiven him. I said, look, it's not his fault. He's just a product of his time, but it's up to me to have to change his mind. Ha ha ha, I'll never change my mind. He was angry with me for 5 years, and I kept showing up at the race and getting better every year, and getting better and getting better. And then getting together with other women who wanted to run, but were afraid to, but would run if I ran. And we then began campaigning, and we changed the rules. And he had to welcome us into the 1972 Boston Marathon as official entrants. And he said, any girls run in my race are going to have to meet the men's qualifying time.
I was going to ask you about this, actually. Yeah.
It was 3:30. Okay, it was pretty fast, even today. All right, for a qualifying time. 8 of us could do it. 8 of us had done it. 8 of us were there. 8 of us started. 8 of us finished. And it was a terrible day. It turned out to be very hot. One of the women had the flu, another woman had diarrhea. We finished anyway. It was an absolute triumph for us. And interesting, this last year we celebrated the 50th anniversary of that.
Phenomenal.
And Jock Semple had to present us with our trophies afterwards. And it was really interesting. He looked like a man who had been like kind of stunned. And he hadn't been noticing us running for 5 years. He just ignored us. And he suddenly said, well, these women really ran pretty well. Like, no kidding.
Did you notice after 72, was the male dominated running culture starting to change? Did you notice any like tangible shifts?
Well, you got to understand the male running culture was one of the reasons why we were successful. Right from the very beginning, the men were wonderful to us. They were just like those guys on the cross country team. So even in my first Boston Marathon, you know, everybody who passed me in that race in 67 say, go for it. He said, I'm with you. We're with you the whole way. I wish my wife would run, you know, see you at the finish. Good luck, good luck, good luck. Always. They were all wonderful. Very, very few bad ones. And in fact, when we started then doing legislation, there were guys who were working in the system already who were AAU, Amateur Athletic Union officials who were showing us where the bodies were buried and how to do some of this legislation. There were guys, you know, who were club presidents who would say, you're welcome in our race. You know, we're going to give you numbers. And so we were wearing bib numbers in a lot of other races already. So the guys, I swear to you, we wouldn't be in running where we are today if those guys hadn't been there for us. Fantastic.
Gotcha. So it's more, you know, societal misperceptions about women in running that you.
Yeah, they look at the picture of Jock attacking me in the race and they think, oh, that's all men. And quite the contrary, they were those guys around me were screaming at him to leave me alone.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it was my boyfriend who took him out, actually physically.
Well, and you eventually got your retribution in 74 when you had the fastest time in the New York City Marathon ever for a woman. Did that run and that time really validate your choice to pursue running?
Actually, what validated me was not my run in 74 in New York, because that was an aberration. It was an extraordinarily hot day. And I thought that I was going to be breaking finally 3 hours in the marathon. And I couldn't do it. But it was a margin of victory of like 27 minutes. So I knew that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I really wanted to break 3 hours and be world class. Yeah. So 75 Boston was my year. And I had to wait another 6 months and I did. Yeah. Honest to God, I ran a 2:51. So that was huge. It was third best in the US and sixth in the world. And yeah, even Jock Semple came up to me and he said, last, that was amazing, you know. Yeah, because I never ever believed that I was a talented athlete. I wasn't a talented athlete, but it just shows what hard work and training can do, and that the capacity for human achievement is overwhelming. And if I could, I mean, I got to tell you, I trained my brains out. I mean, I was training 100 miles a week. I was doing a full marathon plus, so 27 miles every Sunday. How I didn't get injured is amazing. And I was absolutely determined, because I knew if I could gain credibility as an athlete, it would open other doors and people would really take me seriously. And it did. And it did. It also gave me confidence that if I can do that, anybody can do that. And that further perpetuated my desire to create the opportunities I did for women in sports. So all of these were foundation things laid down. In fact, after 75, I quite lost interest in that kind of training again, because I'd already done it. I knew I wasn't going to get much better than that. And my focus then became, as I said, if I can do that, other women can do better, but they have to have the opportunity. And how am I going to create that opportunity? And I will create it by creating a series of events. And that's what I did. Yeah.
You know, what gaps do you still see existing for female runners? I know you created the Avon International Running Circuit, as you mentioned, which you strove to really bridge those gaps and give them opportunities to run. But what gaps still exist that you think we all need to target?
Yeah, I'm just going to highlight this because you can put it in. Which is that it was really, really important to create the opportunities for women that were non-intimidating and welcoming. and not uniquely feminine, but unique for women. So instead of giving an icky trophy, how about a nice piece of jewelry, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nice things, lots of flowers, and feeling very, very welcome. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it was organizing over 400 races in 27 countries eventually, with massive sponsorship, TV coverage, really, really pushing very hard the exposure for women, doing a lot of interviews with them, getting their faces out there, making them known entities, and then working very, very hard within the athletic federations of every country, and particularly the International Amateur Athletic Federation, which is now World Athletics, and also then the IOC. And Peter Uberoth, who was head of the Los Angeles Olympic Organizing Committee, was critical in helping me a lot with this sort of stuff, as well as many other people in the global sports arena. A lot of legislative work pushing, and a lot of medical evidence we were able to sponsor, because that was the final conundrum, that we can't do this because it's going to injure them. I mean, there's still countries out there that believe this, okay? But anyway, we're slowly changing that. So getting the women's marathon in the Olympic Games to me was as important as giving women the right to vote, because it was the physical equivalent. So that was really, really critical for 84. What exists now to happen is we need more women in sports marketing, sports media. We need women in the C-suite in companies who are going to sponsor women's sports events. I mean, if I were the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I got to tell you, I would snatch up women's soccer so fast. It's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the World Cup. My God, everybody's watching. It's amazing.
I know.
And women's World Cup soccer, when it was in the U.S. back in the days of Brandy Chastain, etc. Oh my God, that stadium was full. Bill Clinton was there. It was just, we can do that all the time, and it's just as a matter of creating the opportunity, getting the sponsorship, getting the women highlighted. Okay, women also who are in power need to get behind the sponsorship. Media is extremely important. But the reality is you create the event and you get the media there, it all then happens. Billie Jean King showed us that. Everybody said, nobody's going to watch women's tennis. I mean, I was there for the dollar, I'm a pro, right? I mean, I wasn't there physically, but I was, it was in my ear, right? And beating Bobby Riggs and all of those shenanigans she had to go through. But when she created it, that they said nobody would watch women's tennis. Why should they be paid? They're not performing equal with men. And she persisted, and the women tennis players persisted. I argue now that women's tennis is just as popular and publicizable as men's, maybe more. And people love the game. Same thing is going to happen with soccer. It's and all sports. It's slightly different from the men's game. I, for instance, would rather watch women's soccer than men's, because there's none of this histrionics and trying to injure somebody. Watching the strategy is beautiful. And it's okay that it's slightly different. Oh, we had Women's World Cup rugby here in New Zealand just a few weeks ago. It was sensational. The stadium was packed. This is a country that reveres male macho bashing rugby. And to see women playing it, again, slightly different sport, because they were fast and the passing was extremely precise, miraculous even. I mean, it captured the public imagination. And a crusty old sports journalist said, we've seen a sea change in women's sports today. Yeah.
There's some hopeful progress. I agree with that. So
there's a lot of hopeful progress. No, I think now more than ever, really amazing progress.
Lastly, based on your life experiences, do you have any advice that you would give your younger self?
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you one other thing too. Okay. So do I have some advice I'd give my younger self? Yes, I would ask for help. I always thought I had to do everything myself. I was absolutely exhausted. And I think now I'm finally beginning to pay the price for that exhaustion. I mean, I would get like 3 and 4 hours sleep a night, both in my career and in my training. And only because I was too either arrogant No, not arrogant. I was too ashamed to ask for help.
Mhm.
I thought if I asked for help that I would look stupid, and I
Yeah.
had to figure out the answer. I keep a sign on my wall right now that says, when in doubt, ask an expert. Why do I have to have all the answers? It's
It
like
seems so simple,
like
yet
going to Google. If I go to
right,
Google, why don't I
right.
ask the expert?
It's so profound though, and I think it's something that women struggle with. I think our identity is tied with trying to be
Yeah,
everything for everyone
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
So
So one thing that I have done that I'm extremely proud of, and that it's a little scary because I won't see it reach fruition till I won't see it reach fruition. Okay. I mean, it's going to happen after I'm dead. But
Mhm.
I've started a nonprofit 10 years ago with a woman named Edith Zushman, and it's called 261 Fearless.
Okay.
And it's named after the bib number, and it's
Mhm.
named after that fearless moment when you make a decision, in my case, to finish the race, which was very scary. I mean, I could have walked off the course in anger
Yeah.
and humiliation, but I didn't. I finished the race no matter what it took, I was going to finish. And we all have that moment to make that decision. And so we named the nonprofit 261 Fearless. And roughly it is a series of clubs of women runners who reach out and take the hand of somebody who's afraid to take the first step and help her to walk or run, and help her to find a safe place, help her find her tribe, have somebody that she can talk to, share information with, and take her out of her fearful location and into a fearless place.
That's beautiful.
Running is very, very empowering. It's transformational for women.
Mhm.
And around the world, there are millions and millions and millions of women who, well, most women in America, sorry, most women in the world live in a fearful situation. Whether they're in Afghanistan and under a burqa, or they're living under social and religious restriction, or lack of education, or poverty. Poverty is huge. But she's just as likely to be your next door neighbor, which is a shocking thing for most people to hear. And if we can reach these women and help them find their fearlessness through this simple, cheap, convenient experience of putting one foot in front of the other, we're
Mhm.
going to change the world. And
Absolutely.
we're already in 13 countries and 5 continents. And I have a wonderful education program, and I really would enjoin everybody to come and take part with us at
Yeah.
261fearless.org.
Perfect.
There was my shirt. See, there we go.
Oh, that is so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is amazing. I think the link to community that the goal of the organization has is amazing. So I think that is
Yes,
true. I think women need to feel like they have a tribe behind them to become
absolutely.
fearless.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.